Hello, the internet. Welcome to our 2024 Spring Insanity board game bracket elimination tournament finale, the final four and the championship rounds. So this is a long time coming. We started off with well over 100 games. Some of the games after one game got put back on the shelf, not to be seen again until next year. Some of the games did not get put back on the shelf. They were eliminated from the library completely. And some we played a few times. We had some fun. Some were boring. Some were annoying. Some didn't have rules. Some of the rules didn't make sense. You know, the normal board game stuff. But only one could win it all. And when we left off, we had four. Jump Drive from the north, Power Grid from the west, Agricola from the south, and Penny Arcade from the east. Which of those four won it all? So let's start with the Northwest semifinal. See who won, see their journey, and then move on to the other. And then at the end, I'll show you where we're going to sit for next year, if we do it again next year, with some thoughts and ideas for anyone who sees this anytime in the random future, if at all. So, Jump Drive versus Power Grid. Jump Drive, for those who don't know, is an engine building game, which is a watered down version of Race for the Galaxy, which I have on digital on Steam, but I can't figure out how to get two humans to play on the same computer, so we didn't play that one. But Jump Drive is a very fun game. We really enjoy the engine builder. The one drawback to Jump Drive is that if you don't get a good couple first plays, you fall way behind, and you can't catch up. But it's a very short game. It only takes about 15 minutes to play, and so you can just play another game real quick. Versus Power Grid, which is a game that takes like an hour and a half to play, especially if you're playing 3-player. Game where you do a little bit of everything. It's a lot of fun, a lot of strategy, and we have some different maps. More on that later. So for the semifinals, we do best of 3. The first game, Jump Drive scored a 19, which was a little bit higher than normal, but pretty typical for Jump Drive. So we like that game. But Power Grid has become my second favorite game behind only Titan. And so it scored a 19.75, winning game 1. In the best of 3 series, that put Jump Drive on the defensive. In the second game, it scored a 19.25, so it came out even better. Power Grid scored a 19.5. Power Grid swept and move on. So let's take a quick look at Power Grid's ascension to the final game. Power Grid started out in the play-ins, where it won the play-ins, and Jump Drive, of course, was number 2 in the play-ins. There you see, still number 1, still number 2. And so it snuck into the round of 32, taking Elder Sign's place because it didn't score enough points to move on to the next round, even though it won its battle in the first round. That's how we do the play-ins. In the next round, in the round of 32, Power Grid took on Castles of Burgundy, and you could see it was an 18-18 tie. Power Grid won the tiebreaker. In an alternate universe where Castles of Burgundy won the tiebreaker, we may have a very different video. It may have been Naruto that won the championship, or Jump Drive that won the championship instead of Power Grid. So this could be a foreshadowing of things to come for next year, maybe? Who knows? In the next round, Power Grid took on Rick and Morty, which is the first of many deck builder games by Cryptozoic that Power Grid faced off against, and won by a quarter point. So another very close matchup. Could have gone either way. In the Elite 8, Power Grid knocked off a second straight Cryptozoic game, Naruto, which is kind of my favorite Cryptozoic game, and moved on to the semifinals, where it won, and now and then moved on to the finals. Before we get to the finals, let's look at the Southeast, where we had Agricola versus Penny Arcade. Agricola moved through because it was in probably the weakest division of anybody. But could it go up against Penny Arcade? Well, in the first round, Agricola scored an 18.5. Now, some games, the more you play them, you start to see their weaknesses. Penny Arcade definitely has a few. We definitely like the game, a very fun game, but it does have a tendency to, if you have a bad starting card, bad starting character, it puts you behind the 8 ball quite a bit. We were also playing it kind of wrong. We were only dealing one, which is the basic. Vance says deal 2 and choose 1. Also, we were only playing with 5 cards instead of 6 because most of the Cryptozoic games play with 5 cards and Dominion plays with 5 cards, and so we weren't paying attention. I had 2 rounds that I couldn't do anything. It was literally throw my cards in the discard, and that made it less fun, so I rated it down a bit that time. So it only scored an 18. It lost game 1. All right, so moving on to game 2, which you may have seen a little bit already. Agricola came out 18.75, looking like it may sweep Penny Arcade, but nope. Penny Arcade came back, had a much better game, more fun game, and scored a 19 and won that game, tying it up. Final game, 19.5, 18.5, not even close. Penny Arcade wins and moved on to the finals. But how did Penny Arcade get here? Well, after losing in the Elite 8 last year, but with a very high score to eventually the winner of the tournament of last year's Star Realm, it got a 1 seed this year, where it took on Clue, who had no clue and lost by one of the biggest margins in the tournament, 18-13. Clue gets demoted to play-ins next year, but enough about Clue. Penny Arcade then moved on to the co-op game Pandemic and beat it handily, even though Pandemic's a good game, and scored enough to move way up in the rankings for next year. In the next round of Sweet 16, it took on Seven Wonders and was one of its closer matchups, but moved on. And finally, in the Elite 8, it took on San Juan with a tie, but won the tiebreaker. And so it moved on to the finals. But could it go up against the juggernaut Power Grid? Well, let's find out. Oops. So in the first game, Power Grid scored 19.5 because, well, it's one of my favorites, and my kid likes it too. Now, at this point, we actually convinced our younger boy, who really does not like to play board games because, well, he hates to lose, to play this game. And, this game's not the easiest game to play, but he had a lot of fun with it. He really enjoys the auctions, maybe a little bit too much. He enjoys the auctions so much it causes them to not win the game. Let's just put it that way. But it scored a 19.5, and Penny Arcade only scored a 19. All right, in the second game, both Power Grid and Penny Arcade scored a 19.5, a tie. Now, in this case, we do not break the tie. We just count it as a tie. So we have 1.5 to 0.5 for the win totals. In the third game, now, we try to play different maps when we play Power Grid. The base game comes with the US and German map, so you're not playing the same map over and over again. And you can choose where in the map you play. Some of the places are better to play than others. We decided for the third game, since my youngest boy had never played the French map, to play the French map. My oldest boy really does not like the French map. He really doesn't like it. So he rated it down a little bit. It got an 18.5. And it looked like Penny Arcade had a chance to steal the game and tie it up at 1.5. However, for the first time ever, my youngest one played Penny Arcade. And this is where the cracks are starting to show for Penny Arcade. So this may be a omen for next year that Penny Arcade may be the first 1 seed to go down next year. We'll see. I know I'm giving something away, but that's okay. And he won with almost no strategy, showing that Penny Arcade is a lot more luck, especially 3-player, than we give it credit for. And 2-player, it's kind of hard to notice the luck factor. But you start thinking about the game as like, where's the strategy? How much strategy do I really have? How many choices? And how much do my choices really matter in this game? And you start to realize that they don't matter that much. That you basically have, you could pick this, and that's about it, or you can make some dumber pick. You pick this or a lesser pick. There really isn't much strategy involved. There's a little bit, but not a lot. And also the setups. Sometimes setups are great and makes the game really fun, and sometimes they're just kind of meh. And you're just kind of going through the motions. And so that's Penny Arcade's downside. I could see why it's ranked as low as it is on Board Game Geek. I think it's underrated on Board Game Geek. We probably overrate it because we love our deck builders. But that's where it is. And then after the third game, Power Grid 2.5 points, Penny Arcade 0.5 point, which means that in the fourth game, Penny Arcade had to win to force a game 5. A tie or a loss by Penny Arcade means the tournament is over. So what happened in game 4? Well, Power Grid came out as it almost always does. Scored a 19.5. Penny Arcade. My kid rated it a 9.5, as he does, because it's one of his favorite games. I'm at the point where I think I would rate it closer to an 8. But at this point, because there was a lot of time in between the filming of the Elite 8 and now, because I hurt my knee and lost 3 weeks. So, well, let's just say I had next year all set up, and Penny Arcade game below an 18.75 would screw up everything because I would have to reseed the entire tournament, and I didn't want to do that. So I lamed out. I gave it a 9.25, so it would be the final 1 seed next year. But that being said, if we start both rating at 8s and it drops down to a 16, you saw that we had one team that didn't even make the round of 32. That was a 16 last year. Penny Arcade may not survive very far next year. It may get knocked out by a play-in game. So just probably not. It'll probably make it to the round of 32 and they get knocked out before the Sweet 16. We'll see. So it could be the first number 1 knocked out next year. We'll see how that works. But stay tuned. Well, stay tuned next year. March. But if we have it next year, we might not. Power Grid was the winner. This was a tournament, again, that was over 100 games. We started the round of 64 7 months ago, because we play at best a game a day usually. So playing 127 games, well, more, because we did more at the end here because we wanted to play our best games more. Yeah, it takes a lot of months to do that. If you played one a day, that would be over 4 months. And of course you're not, because you're going to have vacations, you're going to have days where you just don't have time for it, don't feel like it. And so, we might do we might just do a 32 team tournament next year, because that would be a lot shorter. Everything else would go in the play-ins. That would shrink it down by a couple months, which, if we started the round of 32 in January, we'd finish the tournament probably at the end of March, which would be more like the sports version of this tournament. So we'll see. If you have any thoughts, feel free to comment. But since nobody's going to watch this, because we had one watcher of the last video, as of videotaping this, which was me, I think. Yeah, and no one's watching. And no one's watching this far. So I could say anything I want I could declare that Jupiter is the dumbest planet that ever existed. I don't think that, but I could declare it, and nobody would ever know. Ever. All right. So anyhow, we're also toying with the idea of giving some random element to the scoring next year. That is to say for Power Grid, I give it a 10, my kid gives it a 9.5. We would then roll a die, a 6-sided die, divide by 2, and add that score. So in this case, final score will be somewhere between 20 and 22.5. Which means this, a game that scores an 18.75 that Pan Arcade did there would actually have a chance to win that game. It would just give a little bit of flavor, a little bit of chaos to the tournament. We're debating that. Feel free to comment. If you're a cat and you like that idea, just type in, the letters X, Z, Y. But then you got to hit that big button that says return that you can't read because you're a cat. But whatever. All right, so that's the end of this tournament. What about next year, if next year happens? No, I'm not predicting that the Earth's going to end. I'm just predicting that we may not do the tournament next year. So let's take a look at next year. The 1 seeds next year will be Power Grid, Jump Drive, Naruto. Now it's interesting to note those are all three new games that we had. They were all in the plans. They were 1, 2, and 3 in the plans this year, and they were 1, 2, and 3 at the end of the season. So, will the new game smell run out for some of these? Will they get upset? Will the few games we've bought since this tournament, there's like 7 or 8 of them, will any of them play spoiler? And one of them, by the way, is Earth. Could Earth jump up and take out one or all of these? We'll see. And then Penny Arcade, final. Our 2 seeds are going to be San Juan, Rick and Morty, Star Realms, and Agricola, and all those were pretty much 2 seeds this year. So there'll be 2 seeds again next year. The only one that wasn't was Star Realms, which was a 1 seed last year. It was the winner of the tournament last year, but got knocked out by Jump Drive. So we'll see. We'll get its revenge next year, possibly. 3 seeds, Ticket to Ride India, are my favorite Ticket to Ride game. 7 Wonders, Hero Realms, and Castles of Burgundy, which was a much lower seed this year. We saw it was like a 6 seed, and it got knocked out by Power Grid early on. We'll see how far it goes next year. Maybe he'll play spoiler. Game I really like. My kid likes it too. The 4 seeds, Ticket to Ride Old West, First Sparks, Pandemic, and Titan. Titan was the 1 seed this year. They got knocked off early, dropped all the way to a 4 seed. Pandemic was a 8 seed, moved up to a 4. First Sparks, I think, was a 7 seed, so it moved way up. So some interesting games for next year. And their 5 seed counterparts to play in the Elite 32 if they all win is Sapiens, which is a game you probably never heard of. It's a strategy tile laying game. It's really fun. Catan, Settlers of Catan, Amongst the Stars, and Carcione. In the 6th seed will be Planet Defenders, EcoFlux, Stocks and Bonds, the old game, and the Cryptozoic version of Lord of the Rings, which is a game. The only reason we really keep that game now, because we've got 3 way better games of Cryptozoic, is that it is the only Cryptozoic game that we have that has a co-op option. So that'll keep it in the tournament in the library. But it's when you play co-op, it's actually pretty easy. It's hard to lose. So it's one of those games where we like it, but it's going to probably slowly fall down the list. The 7 seeds, Legend of Drizzt, Ticket to Ride Europe, which is a game that is starting to sour for me. First Class, and chess, because my kid really loves chess. Our 8 seeds, if we have all 64 next year, we're going to have some really, really interesting 8 versus 9 games next year, because we have some very interesting 9 seeds. But our 8 seeds are Bella Magica, which you probably haven't heard of, Cthulhu Flux, the digital version Wingspan, we don't own the physical version because I got a really huge sale on the digital. It was like, okay, I got to buy that for like $10. I'm like, yeah, okay, easy. Insert Cutting Space Light, which is a really fun game. I really like it. My kid doesn't like it as much as I do. But it'll be an 8 seed. And then our 9 seeds, Lords of Waterdeep, which was a game that got a 16 and didn't move on to the round of 32 and didn't even get an 8 seed. So that's how deep the library is. Turn A, which was a 3 seed, it fell hard. Axis and Allies, which was a 4 seed that fell hard, and Ticket to Ride USA. So ones that kind of fell down a bit that could maybe get their revenge next year. We'll see. So those could be some interesting. We could see some 9s upset the 8s. We got really good 8s and really good 9s. So we'll see how that works next year. And then we get our 10 seeds. I'm not going to go all the way through these, but some of the 10 seeds are nice. We got War of the Worlds, which is a 2-player board position kind of game. Older Science, which was a 3 seed and fell way down. Space Jam Monopoly, my kid loves basketball. That's the only reason it's there. The real Monopoly is all the way down at 13. We might not even play it next year. The games that are plans that we have played a few times and we know they're kind of meh, we're going to vote on whether we even play them. And if the answer is no, we're going to ask ourselves, if we don't want to play this game, why do we still have it? And get rid of it. And Wizard Always Wins, which is a game very similar to San Juan, that it is based on picking roles. The catch is that you can only win by being the wizard and doing something specific. And if you are the wizard and you don't pull off what you want to do, then you accomplish nothing that round and you go last the next round. So it's a risk-reward game. It's a lot of fun. My wife really likes it. It's one of her favorite games. And then Dominion's an 11 seed, believe it or not. We love our deck builders, but Dominion, the classic, we had a kind of a bad game of it because the setup was not good. We don't own any of the expansions to Dominion, by the way, which is probably why it's a little bit lower on our list than some people would have it on their list. But, hey, could the 11 take out a 6? Maybe. And then a few others. I'm not going to name all of these off. You can kind of see them. Because at this point, you can see how many 15s we have, how many 14.5s we have, 12, 14.5s. We got a lot of them. We have 15 that scored a 14, but only 3 of them are going to be in the tournament next year. This was based on, I didn't do these for the 14.5s and 15s, but because this one mattered, we took the ones that were the highest seeds this year, or the highest equivalents. Gargoyles was from the play-ins, but and since it actually made it past the first round, unlike any of the other games, it got to stay in. Solar Quest and Valerian were higher seeds than any of the others. A lot of them were in the play-ins this year, so that's what they'll be next year. We're going to have 45 games in the play-ins next year. A lot of 29 of them were ones that didn't score high enough to make it in. I think we have about 8 that we bought, and we have a few that we either couldn't play because they were 3-player, and we'll have to get my wife or my little one to play them this year, maybe over summer break. Or games that we had buried in boxes, or I didn't realize that they were there, and so we've had them, but we just never played them. So we got to pull those out and play those. So that's where we're going to be next year. By the way, one of the games that we bought is Earth. So look out for Earth. How far up this list can Earth go? How far into the tournament can it make it? Will it make it past the plans at all? Well, find out next year. Or more likely, you're going to watch one of these for the first time in like 2030 and then go, oh, well, maybe I should go back to 2024 and see how that worked, and then watch 2025 and 2026. And I don't know if I'm going to be doing it that long. We'll see. We'll see. So you'll see me in the future, and I'll see you in the past. I don't know how that happened. Um, but until then, that's the end of this season. Until the next one, goodbye, everybody. Enjoy your board games. Except the ones that suck, then sell them to somebody else. Make it their problem.